today I'm going to read Cinderella, which is adapted by Amanda Askew.
Once upon a time, there lived an unhappy young girl. Her mother had died, and her father had married a widow with 2 daughters. Her stepmother spoiled her own daughters. Nothing was too good for them: dresses, shoes, parties, whatever they wanted. But for the poor, unhappy girl, there was nothing at all. Her dresses were her stepsister's hand me downs. Her dinner was nothing but scraps. Her day was filled with hard work. Only when evening came was she allowed to sit for a while by the fire near the cinders. Everybody called her Cinderella. One day, beautiful new dresses arrived at the house. A ball was to be held at the palace, and the stepsisters were invited. Cinderella didn't ask if she could go too. She knew very well what the answer would be. Instead, Cinderella began her chores. She washed the dishes, scrubbed the floors, and made the beds. "I am so unhappy," she sighed. Suddenly, when Cinderella was all alone, a fairy appeared. "Don't be alarmed, Cinderella," said the fairy. "I am your fairy godmother. I know you'd love to go to the ball, and so you shall." "But I'm dressed in rags," sighed Cinderella. The fairy godmother smiled and flicked her magic wand. Cinderella found herself wearing the most beautiful dress she had ever seen. Cinderella was speechless. "Now for your coach," said the fairy godmother. "Bring me a pumpkin." Then the fairy godmother turned to the cat. "Bring me 7 mice." Cinderella soon returned with the pumpkin and the cat with 7 mice. With a flick of her magic wand, the fairy godmother turned the pumpkin into a sparkling coach. Next, she turned the mice into 6 white horses and a coachman. Cinderella could hardly believe her eyes. "There is one condition," said the fairy godmother. "The magic will wear off at the last stroke of midnight, so you must be home by then." "I will, thank you, fairy godmother," said Cinderella, beaming. Cinderella had a wonderful time at the ball, dancing with the prince himself. Then, when she heard the first stroke of midnight, without a word of goodbye, she slipped from the prince's arms and ran down the steps. As she ran, she lost one of her slippers. Still away she fled, vanishing into the night. The prince was now in love with her. He picked up the slipper and said to his ministers, "Search everywhere for the girl whose foot this slipper fits. I will never be happy until I find her." The ministers tried the slipper on the foot of every girl in the land, until only Cinderella was left. "That awful untidy girl simply cannot have been at the ball," snapped her stepmother. "The prince ought to marry one of my 2 daughters." To everyone's amazement, the shoe fitted Cinderella perfectly. The fairy godmother appeared and waved her magic wand. In a flash, Cinderella was transformed. In an elegant dress, Cinderella shone with youth and beauty. Her stepmother and stepsisters stared at her in amazement. The ministers had found the prince's true love at last. Cinderella and the prince married the very next day and lived happily ever after.